So, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Raba Eleman. I'm a Foundation Year 2 doctor, and I'm also RIGAf's research coordinator. I've been involved in writing abstracts as well as posters for conferences, and I'm really excited to share some practical tips with you today. So the session is all about making abstract writing and poster presentations a bit less intimidating and a lot more effective. I'll be walking you through the key steps and I'll show you examples. And we'll also talk about the common mistakes and how to avoid them as well. Please do feel free to keep your questions ready. We will have time at the end to discuss. So in this session, we're going to walk through the journey from writing and submitting an abstract to presenting that work effectively as a poster. By the end, you should have a clear understanding of the submission process and how to write abstracts that get noticed, and also how to sort of design posters that can communicate your research clearly. We'll also look at the common mistakes that can reduce your chances of acceptance, and I'll share some practical tips to help you present with more confidence. And the overall aim is to make sure that your research gets the visibility and the impact that it deserves. Oops. So why do abstracts matter? Submitting abstracts and presenting posters isn't just about a ticking box for a conference. It's also about sharing your work with peers and getting the valuable feedback. It helps you see how your research sort of fits into the bigger picture of your field. And it's also a great way to build collaborations and networks, and sometimes even opening doors to career opportunities. But most importantly, I think abstracts and posters are a key form of scientific communication. Often the very first impression others will have of your work are the abstracts and posters. So this is essentially the journey of an abstract. So this funnel illustrates the typical journey of an abstract. It begins at the top with the call for abstracts, where conference organizers announce themes, guidelines, and most importantly, deadlines for the abstract submission. And then once it's submitted, it goes through these submission platforms. And then after that, the abstracts move into the review phase, where reviewers assess the quality, the relevance, and the clarity of an abstract. And then finally, a smaller number of abstracts make it through to the acceptance for presentation, either as a poster or as an oral presentation. And the funnel shape shows that while many researchers do start at the top, only a portion do make it to the end. And that's why it's critical to follow the instructions, meet the deadline, and make sure your abstract is as strong and as clear as possible. So moving on to the structure of an abstract. Once you've decided to submit an abstract, the next step is writing a strong abstract. Almost every conference expects a similar structure, which is the following that I have here on the slide. So first of all, you start off with a clear, concise title that captures the essence of your work. And then you provide a short background or introduction that's just enough to explain why this study matters. Following this, you can include an objective or an aim, but not all conferences would want you to include that. Sometimes a background is enough. And then coming to the most complex, I would say, hardest part of the abstract would be the methods. So essentially, how was your research done? You usually have to give a brief description of your methods, and that means how you carried out this study. The heart of the abstract is the results. It's important that you are specific in your results and you do include the data where possible. And then finally, you finish with a conclusion that highlights the main takeaway or the significance of your work. And keeping this structure helps reviewers and readers quickly grasp what you did and why it matters. So I'm going to show you an abstract that we submitted. This is an example of an abstract that we submitted to the World Congress of Neurology in 2023, which was accepted. The original study was complex, and it had a lot of data and technical details. So it was quite hard summarizing everything into 250 words. Our job in the abstract was therefore not to show everything, but to just capture the essence of the study in a way that reviewers could quickly grasp it. So as you can see, here's our title. It's very clear and concise. It's called Transcontinental Algorithms in Epilepsy. An epilepsy type algorithm that was developed in India, worked in Sudan. So this is what our background looked like. So for the background, we kept it short and focused. Essentially, what we were saying was why the problem mattered and why the study was needed. We didn't go into every statistic or detail about epilepsy. We said just enough to explain the gap and the purpose of our study, and this helped reviewers immediately see the relevance. So essentially, we say the effects of epilepsy are worse in lower income countries where most people with epilepsy live and where most are untreated. Correct treatment depends on determining whether something is focal or generalized, and an EEG and MRI are usually not available to help. So an entirely clinical method is required. So as we said, after the title and the background, we have the methods. So this is an example of what our methods looked like. I would say that because our study was quite complex, this was probably the hardest part of sort of forming a paragraph for methods that would be easily understood by the reviewers and would show the relevance of the study as well. So in this methods section, again, the temptation is obviously to explain everything. But as I said, an abstract does not allow that. So instead, what we did is we just highlighted the main approach, which was reanalyzing data, the key variables and how we applied it. And that gives the reviewer confidence that the study is scientifically sound without sort of overwhelming them with too much methodology. So essentially what we're saying here is we took an algorithm that was made in India and we wanted to see if it worked in a population in Sudan. And this algorithm used information about the patient, like certain clinical features, to predict whether or not this was a focal or generalized epilepsy. So that's the methods. As you can see, we don't have an objective or aim in this abstract. I think we had looked at the conference's guidelines and there wasn't anything in the guideline about having an objective or an aim. They only wanted a background. So after the methods, we go to the results, which I said is the heart of the abstract. So for results, reviewers want numbers. That's what they're looking for, but only the most important numbers. So here we gave accuracy, we gave sensitivity and specificity as well, which immediately tell the reader how well the algorithm worked. We left out the less relevant details so that the main message stands out. So after results, we have conclusion. So in conclusion, the conclusion ties it all together. So essentially it ties what the results mean in the bigger picture and why they matter. Notice it's written in plain language, so even someone outside the exact field could understand the significance. And this helps ensure the abstract is impactful and memorable and likely to be accepted. So our study showed, in this case, that the algorithm essentially worked well in Sudan, even though it was developed in India. And that means that tools like this can be useful across different countries, especially in countries where there's low resources such as MRI and EEG. We essentially say that the algorithm can support doctors, even those who are less experienced, to decide on the right treatment, giving more patients sort of a chance at proper care. So the key lesson here is that abstracts are about clarity and they're about focus. So what we did in this scenario is we distilled a very large, complex study into a few sentences under each heading, and we gave enough detail to show quality, but it was also simple enough for a busy reviewer to see the importance at a glance. So this is essentially a summary of what we've talked about, but I also wanted to give some tips on writing a strong abstract, and also mistakes to avoid. So when it comes to actually writing and submitting, the most important thing is to read and follow the conference instructions. So every meeting has its own rules about word count, format, headings, and submission process. And it sounds basic, but a large number of abstracts are sometimes rejected simply because they didn't follow the guidelines. Beyond that, it's important that you do keep your writing clear and simple. Highlight what's new about your work, and it's also important to proofread carefully as well. On the flip side, the most common mistakes are submitting late, ignoring the required structure that a conference would want, writing vague results, overstating conclusions, or leaving typos and errors in the text. And these small mistakes can make your abstract look weak, even if the science is strong. So it is important that we make sure we do avoid those common mistakes. So I think the overall takeaway is that clarity and compliance with instructions matter just as much as the science itself. So once your abstract is hopefully accepted, it can be selected for either an oral presentation or a poster. An oral presentation is a short, timed talk with slides delivered to an audience, whereas a poster presentation, on the other hand, is about turning your abstract into a visual format that people can walk up to and read and discuss with you. And here's the good news once your abstract is accepted. It's that you're almost at the finish line. So you've already done the hardest part by writing the abstract, and now it's about presenting it in a way that's clear, engaging, and visually appealing as well. So for posters, I would say keep the layout simple. Make sure you have a strong title. You want minimal text, and you want lots of visuals like graphs and images. And you also want to make sure that the fonts are readable from a distance. You want to use professional colors on your poster as well with good contrast. So in short, what I'm trying to say is you want your abstract to provide the foundation, and then you want your poster to bring it to life, if that makes sense. So this is one of our posters. This is what our poster looked like when it was presented. But a poster isn't just charts and text. It's also your chance to tell a story, to share your discoveries, and have a little fun while doing it as well. When you're presenting, it's important that you do keep a short 2 to 3 minute summary ready. Be approachable and let your visuals sort of guide the conversation instead of just reading from them. Avoid any clutter or tiny fonts or too much text. The most important thing is a clear message that people can understand quickly. And remember that your sky is the limit. So you can add QR codes, you can add pictures, or even a short quote to make it creative and personal and memorable. I think what happens is when you have a poster where clarity meets creativity, it can be an award-winning poster. So you want to have both of them. You want to have clarity and you want to have creativity as well. So if I was presenting this poster at a conference, I would say, hi, my name is Raba, and I'm presenting a project that combines clinical research with real-world application in a low-resource setting like Sudan. This work tested whether an epilepsy algorithm that was originally developed in India could help classify seizure types. I have a photo here that I can point to and say this image shows one of our outreach clinics in Khartoum, where people living with epilepsy, often untreated for years, were finally assessed. For many, this was the first time they had access to epilepsy. Going on to the methodology, I can say that we used data from India and applied it to Sudanese patients, and it predicted a 92% accuracy, offering valuable decision support where specialist access is limited. And this model doesn't replace doctors, but it supports them. And then I can let them know that if they wanted to see a full list of references, they can always scan the QR code. So what happens with posters is that sometimes there isn't too much space to put in all the references and acknowledgements. So you can always put in a QR code and let people scan the code if they want to see more reading of the research or more references. As much as I am proud of this data and the collaboration behind it, I just want to take a moment to say that you don't need a multinational research team to submit an abstract or to present a poster. Some of the most powerful abstracts that I've seen have come from junior doctors and students who simply shared an important case that they saw on the ward. So it could be an unusual diagnosis, it could be a patient experience that taught you something, it could be a reflection on a trip that gave a terminally ill child a few days of joy and dignity. That's also medicine, and it's also worth submitting and presenting as an abstract as well. So if you've ever seen anything that has made you stop and think that this could be valid, if it inspired you, don't hesitate to submit an abstract on it and present a poster on it as well. So key takeaways from posters is, so what should you remember from everything that we've talked about? First of all, is that your abstract needs to be concise. The abstract needs to be concise, it needs to be structured, and it needs to be impactful because it's the first impression that you're going to give reviewers. Your poster, on the other hand, should be visual, engaging, and focused because it's your chance to essentially tell a story. Always follow the conference's guidelines because they do matter and they help your work shine. And finally, remember that clarity is more important than complexity. So make it simple, make it understandable, and your audience will walk away remembering your key message. So this is essentially what we've talked about, but I would also like to leave you with this thought, which is creativity is intelligence having fun. So remember that your posters and abstracts are not just about the data, but they're also about telling a story and sharing your curiosity and enjoying the process as well. So I also want to make an announcement. Some exciting news. RIGAf will be hosting an online conference on October the 11th, and the call for abstracts open in the first week of September. So now's the time to get your projects ready and start thinking about your titles and methods and results and conclusions, and try to be among the first to submit as well. Your abstracts will be reviewed, and if accepted, you will get the chance to present your poster and share your work with everyone as well. I'd love to take the time now to open the floor for questions. And I'd also like to hear your experiences as well. And if I could answer them, I think that would be great. So what have your experiences been with either starting a research project or submitting an abstract or having it accepted or rejected? And then we can sort of go through why it wasn't accepted or what made you hesitant to start a research study in the beginning. So I'll open the floor to you guys and then we can answer your questions. For the RIGAf conference, is there any specifications for what kind of topics, or is it just anything radiology related? Because it is a radiology conference, I am assuming that it probably would have to be something related to radiology, but I can always double check. But when we do open the abstract submissions form, we will make sure that we do have guidelines in place on what kind of topics we would be accepting. Are keywords always required in abstracts, and what informs the keywords if it has to be included? Let me go back to my presentation. I don't think when I submitted my abstract, I had to involve any keywords. But again, it does depend on the guidelines of that conference. I think when we submitted this research, this study for publication, they did require keywords. Essentially, what keywords are what what are, when you look at a title or when you're doing a research study, what are the three things or the three words that would define that study? So if we used my research as an example, which is this one, I think that the keyword would be epilepsy algorithm, lower middle income countries. Um, so it depends on the title that you're using. And I think they usually give you a specific number of keywords that you can put in an abstract. So they would usually say, give us 3 keywords or 4 keywords. And essentially what they mean is something that will define the publication. So the importance of keywords is that if someone wants to do a research study, say I want to do a research study on MRIs in Nigeria, and I go on PubMed and I put in MRI Nigeria. Essentially, it will look up all the research studies that do have MRI in Nigeria as keywords. So that's essentially the importance of a keywords. It helps improve the searching process for other people who want to do research or for other people who want to look at studies that they're interested in. I hope that answered your question. Has anyone ever tried to um, create, don't have any experience in writing abstracts or in research? I have an interesting case, radiology based, and I'm thinking to submit it for the RIGAf conference. Oh, thank you. I'm happy to hear that. Um, so yeah, so if you have an interesting case that's radiology based, I would say start now. So start thinking of what your title is going to be. Start thinking of what is the question that you're trying to answer in this case. If you have any imaging from this case, like an X-ray or a CT scan or an MRI, you can always put it on the poster as well. Um, and I'm happy to guide you in that. You can always send me an email on my email, and I'll be happy to guide you on that. But I think what I want to remind people is that submitting abstracts can sound scary, but they're actually not. All reviewers are asking for is for you to give a title, a background, methods, result, and a conclusion. And then as soon as that's accepted, you can go on to create a poster. So it's not as scary as it sounds, but I would encourage you to submit the abstract at the RIGAF conference, and hopefully it will be accepted for you to present. Has anyone ever submitted an abstract before that was probably rejected? And they want to discuss reasons for rejection, or what their experience was in general? Can I submit an abstract when I haven't started my research? So I think in order for you to have an abstract, you have to have something in mind that you're researching, if that makes sense. So you usually have a research topic in mind with an understanding of what you're trying to research. And then you usually have the results of that research before you submit an abstract. Because when submitting an abstract, as I said, there's at least 5 things that they want from you, and one of them is a result and a conclusion. So if you have a research that you've done and you have the results of that research and a conclusion from that research, you can use that information to submit an abstract. But I'm not sure how you'll be able to submit an abstract if you still do not have that information, if that makes sense. Victoria, if I understood your question wrong, you can re-clarify and I'm happy to answer it again. So for clarity, the presenter designs the poster, not the organization calling for abstract. The presenter designs the poster. No, yeah, the presenter designs it. Yeah, the presenter has to design it. So the organization can give you a template. So the organization can say, this is a template to help you in presenting your poster. You can use that template if you want to. And what the template usually is it's usually a Microsoft PowerPoint template that has a specific design. So for example, orange and red in color, but it doesn't have the contents of your abstract. So it's up to you to decide it according to how you want to design it. You can use Canva that has great A3 posters that I would personally recommend for designing a poster. But you have to design the poster, and then the conference will also give you the dimensions for that poster. So they will tell you it should be this inch in height, this inch in width. And so you print out the poster and you go to the conference carrying that poster with you. We need a poster and an oral presentation. So I think RIGAF conference will have them open for both. So I think we will have a platform open for poster presentations and also a platform open for oral presentation. It's either that your abstract gets accepted as a poster presentation or it gets accepted as an oral presentation. It usually depends on the content of the abstract, and also on the availability of spots for oral presentations as well. Can a work that has not been published in a journal be accepted for a poster? Yep, of course it can. Any work that hasn't been published can be accepted for a poster or an oral presentation. There is a lot of questions surrounding if a research has been published, can it be accepted? But if it has not been published, it should always be accepted for a poster and an oral presentation. If obviously it's good enough and meets the requirements of the conference, so that would be fine. The conference is virtual, so it's an online conference. But I would encourage everyone to submit their abstracts. And if you have any questions about the guidelines on the abstract, or if you face any problems during that time, I'm happy to help. We'll make sure to announce the timing of the conference, and also the forms that you'll need to apply through to. on all the RIGAf platforms. Email, yeah, I can type it in here. Can a used abstract be reused again? I'm not quite sure about that. I haven't personally ever presented an abstract twice, because usually when you present an abstract somewhere, especially if it's an international conference, it gets published on their website. So that abstract gets published on their website. So I'm not quite sure about that, but I will ask around, and I will send a message back on the RIGAF group. If you let me know which RIGAF group you're on, I can ask around and send you a message back. Can I have my oral presentation delivered for me by someone else who's part of the research? Yes, that's fine. As long as they're an author of that research or of that abstract, it's fine for them to present it on your but then obviously when you do sort of put it out on your CV, you have to mention that someone else presented it. But if it's your abstract and someone else presented it, I think that's fine, as long as they're an author. Okay, that's fine. I'll make sure to send a message there about your question. Let me just copy it. Does anyone have any burning questions that they'd like to ask? Yep, case studies. So as I said, anything can be made into an abstract. A case study, a case report, an interesting case report that you came across. I did have a colleague who once did an abstract on, there was a terminally ill patient who had, who I think they were sent to a spaceship museum, terminally ill pediatric patient sent to a spaceship museum, and he did an abstract on it. And it was an amazing abstract. He put in images of the museum, and then he put in images of the family at the museum. And the conclusion was these trips improve the quality of life of patients with terminally ill diseases. But it was a very interesting abstract, sort of bringing awareness to terminally ill pediatric patients and what can improve their quality of life. So anything can be made into an abstract. It doesn't have to specifically be anything complex, or it could be a case report, it could be a case study, it could be anything. So yeah, there's no limits when it comes to abstracts, I would say. And as I said, some of the most powerful abstracts that I've seen have come from students and junior doctors, I would say, because they had simply seen like a case on the ward, that they had questions about. It could sometimes be a usual diagnosis with unusual investigations, or it could be an unusual diagnosis. And they would make a reflection on it, and it would be an abstract, and they would present it. And sometimes it could easily be like an award-winning poster, if obviously done in the right way. Always make sure that you follow these guidelines, which is a title, a background, and you have to be very concise with why you're doing the study. And then the methods, how this study was done, who was involved, and the results, which what reviewers usually want to look at data. They usually want to look at specific findings, and the conclusion, which is essentially the significance of the abstract. Sure, I'm happy to share my slides. I'll see if we could. So this session is recorded. I think this session will be uploaded onto the RIGAf website, so you'll easily be able to access it there. But I'll see with the team how we can send the slides to all the members. So key benefits of attending a conference. So I personally think that a lot of people attend conferences. Number one, the main purpose is to get points on their CV. That's why a lot of people go to conferences. The number one reason why people do an audit or do an abstract and submit it and then do the poster and present it somewhere is because they want points for their CV. I'm not sure where you're located, but in the UK, a lot of the training jobs, in almost most of them, they do require you to have done some presentation of some sort. So that's the primary reason why people do them, I would say, in my opinion. But I think the second reason would be it's about sharing the work that you've done, that you're curious in, that you're interested in, sharing it with peers that are in a similar field and getting valuable feedback from them. So that's sort of the secondary intention of people. If you're really interested in something, you'd want to present it to people and you would want to get feedback from people. And you'd also want to collaborate with people in that field to do even more research and more studies, which can open the opportunities for career progression as well. It helps to see how your research fits into the bigger picture of your field. And it's, as I said, a great way, I would say, to build collaborations and networks. A lot of people, some people who do attend these conferences can get awards and prizes, and that could also add immensely to your CV. And they are, if you're interested in academia and scientific research, they're a key form of scientific communication, because how else are you going to communicate your research interests to the wider scientific community? That could only happen in a conference. How else are you going to showcase what you've done? That can only happen in a conference. I do think that the ultimate goal for anything is to have a publication. As much as presentations are amazing, I think they can open the door for publications as well that do weigh much more on CVs. And attending conferences and presenting them also give it you get to see the first impression of what your work has on people. But I get that a lot. Like, what's the point of attending a conference? What's the point? And it's also good. It's good for you as well in terms of your communication improves, social skills improve as well, and that can help you in all facets of life. It can help you in your medical career. It can help you in your other facets of life as well. I can see the chat where you put your email. Please resend. Thank you again. Okay. Whatever the reason is in order, ultimately it drives learning, eliminates redundancy, and promotes engagement. Yeah, Yeah, exactly. You're welcome anytime. Oh, thank you. I'm happy to know that. I wanted it to be concise and short because I know people really don't have attention span for anything more than 30 minutes, I would say. But I think I've given you all the golden points that I've sort of taken from my experience with abstracts and poster presentations. And I hope you could take that information and use it to submit abstracts as well. You're welcome. Okay, I can see we've got 3 people typing. Uh, can you please organize a workshop on writing an abstract, like hands-on? Because I still don't understand the methodologies that can be used in writing abstracts. Or is there any good online course you can recommend? Hands-on. Okay, so does that mean step-by-step approach to uh so you want a step-by-step approach on this is your idea, this is how you're going to form your title off of that idea. Um uh okay. Hmm. So do you have an idea in mind? Do you have like a specific idea in mind for research now or for an abstract? I don't know it yet, but I've seen something like a meta-analysis and abstract, and I don't know how that works. Understand how to choose methodologies in abstract writing. So I think what you're talking about is research methodologies. Um, so in research, there's a number of methodologies that you can use. There's case reports, there's clinical studies, there are random controlled trials, and then there's, as you said, meta-analysis and systematic analysis. Uh, so I think that's more of a research thing than it is an abstract thing. So as soon as you do have an idea for a research, depending on what that research is, you will be choosing the methodology. So is this a case report? Is this a cross-sectional study? What kind of study is it? And then as soon as you know, you would need a supervisor for a research study. So you would need a consultant or a clinical supervisor, someone to supervise that study or that research that you're doing. You usually sit down with the supervisor and you discuss what would be the most appropriate methodology for the study that you want to do. And then after that, it will ease the way into creating results and having a conclusion. And then once you're done with that, you summarize everything that you've done into an abstract. So then it would be easier for you to have a title, and then it would be easier for you to have, you just put in the methods that you've already discussed with that supervisor or that consultant. So essentially, an abstract is something that you create from a study that you've already done, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if that made sense to you, but usually you have a study that you're doing, and in that study, you already discuss the methodology with the person that's supervising you, and that could be a case report or a cross-sectional study, or a randomized controlled trial or a meta-analysis, depending on what study you want to do. And then after that study, you use that information to create an abstract, if that makes sense. So I think what you're asking for is someone to help you with the study that you have in mind, if that makes sense, but not necessarily the abstract writing. You're welcome. Does anyone have any more questions? Any burning questions, any questions from the presentation? I'm happy to answer. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing a feedback form. Let me see where it is. I think it's the end. But thank you all for your time today. It's been great to see your interest and to see your enthusiasm. I really hope you benefited from this short session. You have my email if you have any questions. Is there anyone that might want to collaborate in the abstract writing towards? Yeah, also take this opportunity to collaborate with each other. That's great. Collaborate with each other to think of a study, and to apply for the RIGAf conference. And you have my email if you have any questions about how to sort of formulate the abstract. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. But I wanted to thank you all for your time. Really nice to see everyone's interest and enthusiasm. And I really hope you benefited. Looking forward to reading all of your abstracts that you submit. We won't be harsh in the review. I think we just want to make sure that the abstracts are up to a specific standard. But we're always there for support if you need us. Yeah. Okay, shall we call it a day? Yeah, excellent. Yeah, as long as we can see that, you did try your best and put in everything that you could in the abstract, then we're happy. Okay, I think we'll call it a day. Um, have a nice evening, everyone. Thank you. Bye. I think someone's typing. How do we get the slides? I'll see if we can. I'll see if we can send them through to your emails. If you're a RIGAf member, I'm pretty sure we already have your email address, so we can try sending it through to all the RIGAf members, or at least those that have attended, if that sounds okay. Yeah, those that registered, I think. Did you all manage to register on the link that we sent? Okay, if you registered, I'm happy to send it to, because I have all the emails of those that registered for the session today, so I can send it out to those that registered because I have their emails. Can we present a rare case radiology for the conference? Yes, of course you can. So you can, so a rare case report can be submitted in the form of an abstract, where the title is, "This is the rare case that we saw," and then the um, method is usually case report methodology, so it's quite straightforward. And then the results are, so how did you diagnose it? What were the sort of presenting symptoms, and what was the final diagnosis based on that? And then the conclusion is what you sort of learned from that study. And then the background could be a background of what that rare case is exactly, or what the presenting symptoms were. So yeah, you can definitely present that. I think we'd be interested to see something like that as well. Okay. Okay, thank you everyone. Have a nice evening.